Here are the tools we're going to be using. Some of them are not necessary, but they will make the job easier. So let's start off with some gloves to keep our hands clean. You're going to be working with the battery acid, so let's take some precautions. Next, we have a rivet removal tool here. This can be found on Amazon as a kit, super cheap, like $5. Then I have a flathead in case you do not have this tool. So a flathead will work, it'll take a little longer. We have a ratchet, and then we have an extension to the ratchet. This is a 10-inch. I wouldn't use anything smaller than 8 inches just because you want to have some clearance for the battery. So this is to remove the battery clamps that are holding down the battery securely. Next, we have a 10 millimeter. This 10 millimeter is going to help you remove the nuts that are holding down the battery cables. And this 10 millimeter is also used for your fender brace or your crossbar on the driver's side. Next, we have a short or a regular 13 millimeter socket. This socket's going to be used for one of the 13 millimeter bolts that is holding down the fender brace on the passenger side. And then we have a 13 millimeter extension. You're going to use this 13 millimeter to remove the majority of those brass colored nuts on top of the battery, on that battery box. And then there is an extended 14 millimeter, and this one specifically is used to remove the red positive cable that is sitting on that black battery box. Optional is this magnet extension. This is in case you drop a bolt or a nut, and in case your battery clamp or something is like wedged in there. So that is optional. Safety goggles. You're working with battery acid. You only have 2 eyes, so let's use that. I have a towel here to clean the engine bay, to clean any battery acid. And I have these wire brushes. You can use these to clean your terminals if you have a lot of corrosion on them. And I'm using a power drill here just to remove some of these faster. The batteries we'll be using today are going to be the H648s. These both have a cold crank amp of 730, and they both come with a 3-year 36-month warranty from Costco. So these are interstate batteries. I think these are the only ones Costco are going to carry throughout the country. I may be mistaken, it might vary by region. Here's your item number and all of the information you need. So again, I've had a great experience with these batteries in other cars. If you ever have an issue, just take it back and they'll literally give you a brand new one, no questions asked. So you also have this convenient handle here. Let's do an overview of what's going to be needed. We remove the plastic cover here, the radiator cover. You have 12 rivets that you need to remove. You can use the rivet tool or a flathead. I really recommend the rivet tool, it's much quicker. Then we're going to remove this weather strip. It's pretty easy. This one just pulls out. Just be careful, you kind of pull out and down. Some people have said that they have a 3M tape here, so just don't yank this out. Be careful if you do have that. The next step is going to be removing these crossbars. This one has 2 10 millimeters, and the crossbar over here has 3 13 millimeters. After we remove the crossbars, we are going to remove the battery. The battery has 10 millimeter nuts on all 4 of them, so positive and negative. And we want to disconnect the negatives on both sides first, and then we disconnect the positives. So to remove this little cap, again, you kind of just pry it out from here. I think the left side seems to be easier, so you just pop it off there. So there's your 10 millimeter. And this is a 14 millimeter. You do not need to remove it. There's plenty of space in this side of the engine bay. So this 14 millimeter would just remove this little plastic box if you wanted to remove it. Again, you don't need to remove it. I don't find it that it's necessary. To clip this back on, you just put it down there, push it down nice and secure. There we go. And this side is going to be where you are going to require the most work, just because it's a very high side of the truck where the fender is, and there's a lot more connection going on here. So again, remove your negative on both sides. Then what I find more useful is just remove this cover. It unclips super easy. Get that out of the way. After you've disconnected both negatives, disconnect your positive. There's one video where they kind of just lift this black box up and out of the way. I don't like that because I want to have as much space as possible to gain access to the battery clamp on the bottom of the battery. So you unscrew under the cap, you unscrew off. There we go, hold on. So I'm going to end up removing all of these just because it's more simple. So you unscrew all of these gold bronze nuts here, and remember that they're all numbered. All of these cables are numbered. So this is 1. 1 sits on top of 2, and then you have 3, 4, 5, and then for our red positive here, you have a 14 millimeter nut here. So you put your red positive, you screw down this 14 millimeter nut, then you have this cable, which is number 6, and then you screw down a secondary nut. So this is going to be quite tricky if you don't have this video. That's why I'm making it. And you have these 2 blue clips. I ended up removing just this right one with the flathead. I just pushed down and pulled out. That gives me access to lift this up and out of the way, to pivot it out of the way, so I have more access to get that battery clamp. You want to have as much space as possible to stick your hand in there and to work with plenty of space. Now, to reattach everything, this video is going to be helpful. A lot of the other videos don't show this. Make sure to clean your battery trays so that it sits level, and try not to have the batteries on their side too long so it doesn't leak battery acid. The first step we will be doing is removing this plastic cover. The reason for removing this plastic cover is that you have your bolts for your crossbar under on both sides. I've seen some people fold this back, but just do it the right way. You're going to save the plastic and you're not going to snap anything. If you get one of these tools on Amazon, which is to remove the rivets, or a flathead, that should be more than enough. And you will have 12 rivets throughout the front. So just take 3 minutes, remove this, and do it the right way. It's going to give you more access. So now we're going to remove this first crossbar. We're going to use a 10 millimeter to take this off. You have a washer attached, so don't lose that washer. There's nothing under. For the passenger side crossbar, we're going to have a total of 3 bolts. We have one here, a second, and a third on the top. This bolt is a 13 millimeter size, and for this rubber seal here on the left, we can just slide it forward and it should come out. You have some hooks here, so pull it forward and these hooks should disengage. Let's have a closer look. So we're going to start by removing both of our negative cables, both sides first, and we're going to loosen these 10mm bolts here. Then you can move these back out of the way. Should be good. And then for the positive, you have a 10mm, and this is a 14mm, but you don't really need to move it. It's not touching anything, so this is more if you want to remove your positive cable from this plastic here. So let's get these out of the way. Then you can see down here, this is a 13mm clamp that is holding this battery secure. So to remove that, I have a 13mm extended socket on a 10-inch extender here. So we're going to be using this to remove our clamp on both sides. They should both be 13mm. So that's where I removed the battery clamp from. This is what it looks like. Your 13mm, and it kind of wedges in. This is what it looks like with the battery removed. Try to move it out slowly. The OEM ones don't have a handle, so it's kind of a pain in the ass since it's heavy and the truck's high. I rested it on here and then wedged my hands under it. Now's a good time to clean. This isn't too bad, but you want to make sure it has a nice level surface. So Looking at our passenger side battery here, we have a 10 millimeter holding our negative down that I removed, and same with our positive. We had a 10 millimeter that we removed, and on the back here there was a 14 millimeter gold nut that I removed. So as you can see there's a 14 millimeter. Make sure if they're dirty, go ahead and take the time to brush them out with a wire brush. Shouldn't take too long. And for this black cover, some videos are showing you could unclip this on the front and the back there. You're gonna have 2 clips as well. I went ahead and removed these cables from the top as well. So these are 13 millimeters as well, and I believe this outer edge is a 14 millimeter. I also unclipped this first blue cable. I left the second one on because I don't need to remove it. It's also a pain in the ass. So the reason for removing this is when you lift this black cover up, you can pull it up and tuck it back there. So removing this gives you extra space to rotate that without snagging it. And the reason I want to move it this much out of the way is, as you can see there, you have your battery clamp, and if you keep all these cables on or you don't remove that blue clip, it doesn't let you pivot as much, so you're going to be snagging stuff and you don't want to do that. So use your extension here. This is a 13 millimeter as well. I already loosened this one, so I'm just going to reach in there, and by loosening that blue clip there, see, it gives me access to put my hand in. So that's what it looks like as well, same, identical as the other side. Now let's have a look at the passenger side. I went ahead and removed the battery. You can see there's some sand in here, some dirt. This is from off-road trips, and I even found a rag. So this rag was probably left when someone else worked on this truck at some point. So there's some sand, there's a bit of corrosion, there's some dirt, and I actually had some battery acid leak when I was removing the battery. So make sure you have gloves on, make sure you have protective eyewear. And I kind of brushed the dirt and sand to this little gap. It should fall out to the floor. Clean up any battery acid you have. And when removing this battery, this engineering design wasn't too great. So I slid it back a little bit, and then I popped it up kind of like a willy, and then I lifted it out. Now, since this truck's pretty high, it's kind of a pain. So if you're a bit shorter, try to use a stool or try to have a second person help you. This space is kind of tight, so lift it back, pop it up like a willy, and then lift it out. And when you're lifting it out, try not to have it on its side too long. Same thing when you're installing it, because you will have some battery acid leak. So I had some in the center area here. I went ahead and added the passenger side battery in. It slid in pretty easily. There's going to be, let me see if I can show you guys, kind of a railing here on the left, so it'll slide in, and then make sure there's space for your clamp on the back side there. So remember that little clamp wedge. And the next step is going to be attaching this cover back on, screwing these down with those little gold nuts, and then we will do the same on that side. Alright, so I went ahead and tightened down these nuts here. So again, this one has the number 1 sits on top of 2 there. Then you have 3, 4, 5, and the positive cable in this, you have 2 here. So the positive cable goes below, and this is a 14 millimeter, and then you're gonna have number 6 here sit on top. And notice all of these are gonna have little grooves here where it sits in, so make sure you slide them in accordingly. You can see there, it'll help them slide in. So now I'm gonna fasten this last one here with a 13 millimeter. So I put the 13 millimeter on the bottom. I don't know why one of these specifically was a 14 millimeter, so I'm gonna assume it was the red positive. Since all of these use 13, I'm gonna assume this number 6 uses a 13 as well. So I hand tighten these and then I did about a quarter turn with the ratchet. You don't want to tighten these excessively, but make sure they're on here firm. You don't want these to loosen up and you lose some sort of voltage for some reason. Okay, so a recap. When we first remove, we remove negative, negative, positive, positive. And then to reattach, we do positive, positive, negative, negative. So now we have it attached. We're gonna add our battery box cover here, and this should clip right in. I'm doing one hand here, so give me a little break. I'm gonna open the red cap so it's more access. You're gonna see there's 2 clips. There we go, it's back on. We're gonna close this red cover, give it a wiggle, make sure we don't have a loose part so it's nice and secure. Nice and secure. Let's go do the second side. So now that we have both batteries fastened, I'm gonna go ahead and try starting the truck before I put these fender braces or the crossbars on, because you don't want to put the crossbars on and then something's not starting. So let's just start it up really quick and then we will add the rest if it turns on. Let's go ahead and try starting it. Go. Okay, so it seems we don't have any notifications after disconnecting the batteries. Okay, so that's good. So this blinking light here is just because I need to recalibrate one of the TPMS sensors. That has nothing to do with the battery replacement. So this is going to be a little thing I fix. I'll be making another video on the TPMS, but everything seems to be functioning fine. You have the radio connection here. There's no reset code that I'm seeing. So to finalize our last steps, we're going to reattach our 2 crossbars. And to reemphasize, this one uses 2 10mm. The back one uses 3 13mm. They look like this in case you guys forgot. After attaching the crossbars, we are going to attach the front plastic radiator cover here, and then there's the rubber strip that runs along the side of there. You just slide it in and we should be finished. So again, I'm going to take you guys step by step. I'm not going to leave you out in the cold here. So this crossbar has 2 different ends. This is a more narrow end, and you have a little tip here that curves down, and then you have a wide flat end here. So you're going to be putting it on this outer part, not this inner one. This is for a rivet for the plastic cover. So you're going to put the wide flat part here, and this part that curves down a little bit is going to go on the underside. On the underside there, not on the top, but on the underside. And then you put your 2 10mm in, and then let's do the other side right after this. So now we're going to attach the passenger side crossbar. Both of these ends should be under here and under here, and you have this part that slides over, and they all have like built-in nuts here, as you can see. So we're gonna slide this. Give me a second, I'm doing this with one hand again, so I'm gonna try to get it under there and then under here. There we go. So you got it under and under. And then let's make sure this gets under. So there we go, keep that under. And then, so you want to align this middle part, align it like that. And I'm just going to go ahead and put those 13mm screws in. I added the plastic cover here, the radiator cover. And I did this prior to the rubber seal here, so I have more space to work with. And for this side, the seal doesn't really come down as much, so I just lifted it up a little bit and got it in there. Make sure to kind of bring it down at an angle like this, so you can get it under this grill. And if you lift up the hood latch, it makes it a little easier to slide it in. So I'm going to add all of the rivets, and then I'll be adding the weather strip. Pro tip here, when re-adding these rivets, you notice you only have one little opening there around the whole side. So if you don't have the little rivet removal tool, that blue tool, and you're just using a flathead, I recommend facing this in a way that you're going to have access to it when you work on the truck again. So as you can see here, I have this facing out. You don't want it facing in, and then you have a flathead and you can't really get this out. So face this little groove here in an angle where you would be using a flathead screwdriver that gives you access. Now we're going to attach the rubber seal here on the left side for the passenger side. And it's pretty simple. This rubber strip is going to have this flat little latch that goes down here, and then this hook that you push towards the windshield, and then this little hook that you're going to push down and then up, so it hooks up into the fenders. Here's a video of the OEM batteries out in case you guys want to go the OEM route. So there is your AC Delco. Let me get this one's cleaner. So there's your AC Delco, your model number, and the cold crank amp and everything needed if you guys choose to go down the OEM route, but I'm going with the Costco batteries.